The views expressed on the following broadcasts do not necessarily reflect those of KHLT, Take 12 Radio, or our affiliates. The opinions on this show should not be considered as medical, psychological, or professional advice and are those of the host, co-host, and guest. Take 12 Radio and KHLT Recovery Broadcasting are not affiliated with any particular 12-step fellowship. Now here are your co-hosts, Marv R., Bruce H., and the Monty Man.
Welcome aboard. Yes, welcome folks to another fine broadcast here at Take12Radio.com on your internet dial. Welcome to our open forum, which is entitled The Great Reality, taken from a phrase in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. All right. So, why did the accountant do well in AA? Why did the accountant do well in AA? Any guesses? Any guesses? Well, he was already a friend of Bill's. Laugh, Bruce. Laugh, Bruce. Bruce is just going, no. Okay, why aren't people in recovery good dancers?
I think we are.
I think we are. Because they lose interest after 12 steps.
Oh, God.
Okay, so a man finds out he has an inoperable brain tumor. It's so large they have to do a brain transplant. His doctor gives him a choice of available brains. There's rocket scientist brains for $15 an ounce, regular scientist brains for $10 an ounce, and alcoholic brains for the sum of $800 an ounce. The man asks, how come the alcoholic brains are so expensive? The doctor replies, because they've never been used. Little humor from the 12-Step Gazette. They are our newest sponsor. They've been with us for a while, but now they're giving us a full-page ad in the 12-Step Gazette. I have a copy of the 12-Step Gazette for March and April for both of you guys. There you have rehabs, detoxes, helplines, puzzles, humor page, classifieds, columnists, events, recovery house section, and much more in the 12-Step Gazette. You can visit their website at 12stepgazette.com. And in May and June's issue, it comes out every 2 months, we'll have our full-page ad in there. And it's also, our link's also on their website. So thank you to the 12-Step Gazette. All right.
Crossword puzzle.
Crossword puzzle. That's your word. That's your phrase for today, right? Crossword puzzle. Okay, so we're going to be talking about some promises associated with the 4th step this week. Marv is here. Bruce is here. And before we do, though, I gotta have a little chit-chat about something that is disturbing me. And that is the inability of people in pizzerias to understand my request for a pizza order. Now, see if this makes any sense to you guys. So we go into this pizza place the other night, and
who's we?
My wife, myself, my son, and my daughter-in-law, and my other son, our family. We go in there, and we order a meat lover's pizza. Okay, it's got all this meat on it, but we only want one half. Just pepperoni and cheese. Okay? So
sounds pretty simple.
Sounds pretty simple. One half pepperoni and cheese, the other half all the meats. Now, we have to pay the full price of the meat lover's pizza, as if all the meats were all over the whole pizza. That's fine. I have no problem with that. But doggone it, I want all the meat that I'm paying for. So I simply ask them, take all the other meat that's on the side of just the pepperoni and cheese and just move it over to the other side where the rest of the meat is. So I still have the same amount of meat. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense, Bruce?
Now you're starting to confuse the issue. I got you, though.
Okay. So yeah. So they're going, well, we
not
can't.
fair.
They go, we can't do that. I said, why can't you? Because the computer won't let us ring it up that way. I said, no, just ring it up like a meat lover's pizza. It's the same pizza. And just turn, and they said, well, but the screen where the cooks are, which are, by the way, right behind them, they can talk to them, comes up Meat Lovers Pizza, and they don't know to put that half on the other half. I said, just turn around and tell them. Well, we can't do that. And they're standing at this computer, and they can't figure out how to ring this thing up. And now, I've run into this problem before. I'm like, what is going on? Are we that illiterate? We can't figure out a simple request like that? Just make the pizza.
The age of electronics.
Oh, my word. I'm like, and my wife's going, be quiet, be quiet. You know, she's embarrassed. My one son says, you have to understand, Dad, the computer won't. I said, it has nothing to do with the computer. Just ring it up, the whatever it was, $21 or whatever it is, as the Meat Lovers Pizza. Nothing on the computer has to change. It's what the cook is doing back there. Just move. So I put some napkins out in the shape of a pizza. I tore off pieces of the straw wrapper, and I put it on the pizza, and I said, now watch this. And I picked up the little straw wrapper pieces, and I moved them over to the other side of the pizza. So that's all you got to do. Just take the hamburger and the sausage and the bacon or whatever and put it on the other side. It's so simple. They didn't get it. They did not get it. It is the weirdest thing I've ever seen in my life. Is common sense out of date?
Yes. That's your answer right there.
It is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I just...
And it's not the customer anymore. You're not supposed to please the customer. He's not an important thing yet today.
And they wanted to charge us for extra meat and stuff on the one side. I go, no, it's the same amount.
Well, Lord, you just inconvenience them.
That's right.
You know,
I guess.
I mean, you should know better.
I know, really, huh? Well, somebody who's listening, please email me and tell me, have I lost my mind?
crossword puzzle.
They finally figured it out. They finally figured it out, but I mean, they just put themselves through this terrible brain
Monty,
strain.
what about what you put yourself through? And your family? I'm going to have to counsel Marcia.
I just want the actors on the stage to behave.
Okay.
And my pizza would be, here, I'm eating something I shouldn't eat anyway. You should get it right.
So I wonder if you went to a smaller pizza place where it's more personal.
This was one of those. It was Pizza Amore. I'm going to say it. It was Pizza Amore over there by Mart. Little tiny place. Little Christian-owned and operated pizza joint. Everybody's happy, and there's not very many. In fact, we were the only customers in there. What? Then I'm like, I'm writing a letter. You know, don't write no letters. I'm like, can't believe it. All right. Well, there you go. All right. I said we were going to be giving away more stuff. We are going to give away more stuff. I've got Dr. Jamie Marich's music CD, recovery music CD that we're going to be giving away. Let's see. I'm probably going to give it away on Friday's show. But you have to email me if you are the 10th email, number 10. We gave away the first edition of a copy of the first edition of the Big Book last week. Tony J got that, and we're going to give away this recovery music CD by Dr. Jamie Marich. And so be listening on Friday on how you can get that CD. I'm not going to tell you today. Oh, no, I did tell you today. Boy, I'm losing it. Number 10, email number 10. But this is what you got to tell us. You got to tell us what the topic of Wednesday's show was, this show. The topic is the promises associated with the 4th step. So email me, number 10, and on Friday we'll announce the winner. All right, there that is there. So we're going to come back and do, speaking of pizza, we're going to do a little pizza trivia. So don't go away. We'll be right back.
Foundations Recovery Network invites you to attend Innovations in Recovery, March 30th through April 2nd, 2015, at the prestigious Hotel del Coronado in San Diego, California. Innovations in Recovery is about the discovery and discussion of effective solutions for professionals and their patients. Professionals will learn best practices for treating co-occurring addiction and mental health disorders, process addictions, unconventional and unwilling populations, and how to facilitate a framework for the long-term recovery of their patients. To register for the Innovations in Recovery Conference, visit www.foundationsevents.com.
Serenity Springs Recovery Center, located on the beautiful east coast of Florida. A unique facility that is committed to providing exceptional individual care in small group settings while utilizing their experienced and dedicated clinical and support staff of licensed therapists and doctors. Visit their website, serenityspringsrecovery.com, or call 386-423-4540. Serenity Springs, making a life-changing investment into your recovery. All right, so what?
Take 12 trivia.
That's right. It is time for Take 12 Trivia, brought to you this week by the 12-Step Gazette. Visit the 12stepgazette.com. All right, here is your first pizza trivia question. Pizza comes from the Italian Latin root word pizza, which means, and here are your choices. Number 1, the blackening of crust by fire. Number 2, round meat pie. Or number 3, great munchies for stoners.
Round meat pie.
Round meat pie? What do you say, Marv?
Yeah, number 2.
Well, it's actually number 1, the blackening of crust by fire. But we're going to give you a bell, just because you deserve a bell.
Way to go, Bruce. I was following you.
I was wrong. I was wrong.
Yeah?
4 down. Pizza.
It means the blackening of crust by fire. Okay.
I'll be darned.
Number 2, which category?
I really thought it was.
You really did? Thought it was round meat pie?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you were wrong. So there. Get over it.
I think you're wrong.
No, I'm never wrong.
Okay.
Which category of people are twice as likely to order vegetables on their pizza? Men, women, or stoners?
Number 2.
You say number 2, women? What do you say, Bruce?
I'm going to go with the men.
You know, with men? Well,
That is ridiculous.
it is, because it is women. Yes, Marv was correct. It
I
is
should have
women.
followed Marv.
Yeah, you should have. You should have.
Okay.
No,
I just did that because I didn't know.
You're rebellious.
Rebellious.
no toes, no foot, no horse.
Yeah. Can't
Okay.
get out of town without one.
How many pizzas are sold worldwide each year? 1 million, 5 million, or 5 billion?
5 billion.
What do you say, Marv?
Yeah, that's probably right.
Yes, it is correct. 5 billion is correct. You guys are doing sort of good. Okay, here's your bonus question. The most popular pizza size in the U.S. today is 14 inches in diameter, 16 inches, or 20 inches?
Oh, my goodness. The most popular?
Yeah, 14, 16, or 20.
Gosh. How would we know that?
I don't know.
Are they large, extra large, or extra, extra large?
Well,
20. I'm going to say 20.
you're going to say 20?
Yeah.
I'm going to go with the other one.
Oh, boy. 16 or 14, Bruce?
16. I'll go with
16.
this.
Well, you're both very correct. It would be 14 inches in diameter is the most popular.
Is that right?
Yes, that's right. Yes.
God.
Yeah, 14 inches. Yeah, I think a small is like 12, and then they have those little minis. So 14 is actually a medium. 16 is a large, and 20 is like the family size thing.
I would have still guessed the family size.
Yeah. No. But we are pizza addicts.
See, I thought it was the wife's little one, the biggest one. I mean, it's the one that's
Is the most popular. Yeah, and from what I was reading, about 84% of Americans eat pizza every week. 84, but that's a lot. No wonder we're so chunky in the middle, right? La, 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 la. Pizza. So, Bruce,
Yes.
what's your favorite pizza topping?
Pepperoni and sausage.
Pepperoni and sausage. What about you, Marv? He's just going.
Well, I am kind of a meat lovers type
I am too.
pizza guy.
I am too. I like pizza. I like pizza, but I don't like any pizza. I don't like Pizza Hut. I don't like Domino's. I don't like any of those fast food pizza places. Ugh. Ugh. No, man, I want some real pizza. I want some pizza that has some love in it. All right, we'll be right back with the promises associated with Step 4.
Origins Recovery Centers provides integrated inpatient treatment for substance abuse and co-occurring disorders. At Origins, clients receive expert medical, clinical, and spiritual care individually designed for their needs. Our clients leave Origins with the foundation upon which they will build the rest of their lives. Call now to speak with an admissions specialist. Our toll-free number is 888-843-8935. That's 888-843-8935. Origins, delivering real solutions for real families.
Hello there. This is the Monty Man from Take 12 Radio. You know, men, women, and their families experience tremendous pain and suffering due to the struggles they face from substance abuse and its co-occurring mental health challenges. They need to find a safe place for peace and healing. Well, Therapia Addiction Healing Center was born out of a deep desire to provide that safe and powerful healing environment. Therapia is a Greek word for healing. Traditionally, classic Greek medicine was holistic. It viewed the mind and body as one. At Therapia Addiction Healing Center, they have developed a holistic healing approach to treating addiction that is designed to bring into balance the mind, body, and the spirit. Therapia Addiction Healing Center, helping people recover from addictions by developing and maintaining healthy, meaningful relationships with God, self, and others. Alrighty, welcome back. And our topic this week is the promises associated with the 4th step. Before we get into this, let me ask you guys, we know that in working with people in our respective 12-step recovery fellowships, that it seems to be... It seems that we lose people at the 4th step more than any other place. At least that's been my experience. They stop meeting with us. They stop calling us. They put the brakes on. Why do you think that is, Bruce?
I'm not sure, but I know that's true. I think the minute that you give them something to do where they have to sit down and discipline themselves to at least think about this thing, that we can't do that. We would rather have a one-on-one where we talk with somebody or where we got some input, but to sit down with a piece of paper in front of you and do this thing, it seems to be out of place, and they don't want to do it.
Is it difficult, Marv, to sit down and really put pen to paper and take a look at yourself? Because we're talking, for listeners that don't know, we're talking about a personal inventory here, a fearless and thorough one. It's one thing to talk about it in a meeting. It's another thing to sit down and actually work on some of your defects of character and resentments and fear. Is that a hard thing for a person?
It was hard for me.
Yeah.
But I don't. I think a lot of times when you're getting ready to write it down, that means you have to face it. You have to really acknowledge your character defects, and people don't want to do that.
Yeah, and I think the other problem is that they haven't really understood step 1. Now, I'm not saying it like we hear a lot, just admit we're an alcoholic or admit that point.
Right.
You know, It's to admit that that you're powerless.
So understanding what admitting complete defeat is pretty essential.
I think so. I think that if you do that, if you understand one, why wouldn't you seek a power? Mm-hmm. Why wouldn't you try to? And remember, you got all that pain and suffering behind you, pushing you.
Right.
Right.
Well, there's where fear steps in too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think for me, to understand that there were promises behind this was very helpful, because all I saw was the fear thing. I knew what was coming, even though everybody said don't read ahead or whatever. I knew that what was coming after step 4, and I thought if I started step 4, that means I was on the road to having to say with my mouth some of these issues with my sponsor, and I had been burned so many times by people by opening up that I was scared to death to do that. And then I thought, wow, putting it on paper, what if somebody reads that? I mean, all these different things were going through my mind. But I had somebody that came alongside me that they were very good at easing my fear about that. Mm. They were very well versed in this thing and were very good at it.
Well, I'm a functioning illiterate, and I really had to have somebody help me spell and to do these things, and I had to learn to read and really understand what I was reading. I could read a book, a Lewis L'Amour, and kind of enjoy it, but my comprehension was pretty bad. So anyway, I had that problem, and it wasn't until I understood what step 1 was that I was willing to engage that and to humble myself and ask for help with the spelling and those type things, and try to put a dictionary down there and struggle through this thing. Mm-hmm. But then I found out that people that were well versed in this sort of thing, that could read and had comprehension and could spell, they were struggling. And I was losing a lot of people when I was trying to teach them this that were in that. And I come to believe that the basis for that was they really didn't understand step 1, or they had stuck around long enough to where they were staying sober on their own self-will or the meetings or things like that. Mm-hmm. And so they weren't going to do the work, until they stumbled again or something happened.
Oh, good point. So they got, maybe they did 1, 2, and 3 just by hearing them being read or whatever, thought that they had done those, and some things were getting better.
No, the farther you get from not using, the more you can't convince us that we're going to use again.
Right.
See, so they would just go ahead and do what they're doing, and
this is working for me. So why do I have to go any further?
Yeah. So I don't have to do that.
Yeah.
I want to come over and talk to you, but I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And for some of them, that'll work.
Yeah. For people that are alcohol abusers and not alcoholics, that'll work real well.
Well, I think they're all alcoholics. You know what I mean? But they're some of them don't have that obsession like we talk about.
That happens when you're sober.
Yeah,
right.
But they have real drinking problems, and when they're drinking, they have no woe in their game, and they end up getting DUIs and sent to court. The court sends them here, and those type of things. They're alcoholics also. They have problems with alcohol, but as far as being of the hopeless variety, I think that each man has to answer that himself.
Yeah.
And all I try to do is give them the information for they can evaluate that and make that decision. And if they make that decision, I take them through the steps.
So let's look at these. Number one here on our list says, when the spiritual malady is overcome, here's the promise: we start to straighten out mentally and physically. If we just said we start to straighten out mentally and physically and took it out of context and left it at that, it'd be kind of confusing. So the first part of this, when the spiritual malady is overcome. Let's talk about that for a minute. What is a spiritual malady?
Oh, that's our spiritual disease. Our other words are the fall.
Right.
You know.
Right. Our sin nature?
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a word that in your 12-step support meetings isn't very popular, but Bill uses it. He uses it in the big book. He uses it in other writings that he wrote. The word sin, which means to miss the mark. Fall short, shortcomings. I mean, here he goes again using different words. But we talked about it before. The only time the word disease is used in the big book is when it's referred to as a spiritual disease. Other than that, it's the word illness is used on a regular basis. So when the spiritual malady is overcome, we start to straighten out mentally and physically. I often think about that scripture verse, seek ye first the kingdom of God, and then all these things will be added unto you. In other words, when we seek after our Creator, things fall into place. And this suggests that things fall into place when the spiritual piece is taken care of.
Yeah, and remember, it talks about laying this spiritual toolkit at our feet.
At our feet.
And that's these principles, these spiritual principles that we're going to use to look at ourselves, to work on this spiritual aspect, to see if we can see what's standing between us and the Creator.
Right.
You know what I mean? What is it that's going on? And the root cause of that, they say, is selfish and self-centeredness, that we're relying upon ourselves instead of upon God. See? So it's the steps are really good for that, and that is the spiritual tools. I applied them in life this morning. Took a look at myself and asked God for strength and to do the proper thing.
Right. Marv, when your spiritual center, if you will, is centered, do other things seem to fall into place almost naturally?
Yeah, I've experienced that. Again, I've said it before on this program, but it usually I see it in hindsight.
Me too.
I don't see it right up front. But I think for the newcomer too, and I've said this before. See, they make the statement here: when the spiritual malady is overcome, as if through some miraculous thing, all of a sudden, spiritually we're fit.
Oh, like boom, bam.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's not really the case.
The clue, it gets a little better because it says we start to straighten out mentally and physically. Now, if you're an alcoholic like I am, when I see when the spiritual malady is overcome, I think, as thick-headed as I am, right off the bat, I've got it made.
Or I can't straighten out until it's overcome completely.
Yes.
Right.
So, I guess I'm just kind of being cautious here and saying, give yourself a break and let these things fall into place as they may. It says in the book, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. So,
well, and I like what you said about we start.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it doesn't say anything about finishing up.
Right.
Number two, we cannot be, and this is referring to people that offended us, people that are we have issues with, and so forth. It says we cannot be helpful to all people, but at least God will show us. Here's the promise: God will show us how to take a kindly and tolerant view of each and every one. one of the things that I suffered from in my first year was I got this save the world mentality going on. I get so excited about my recovery that I thought I could fix everybody in the room. And I remember I studied the traditions and I did all that, all that footwork and everything. And by golly, I was going to make sure that meeting up there in Sweet Home was going to be, done right. And I was going to, everything was going to line up. I don't know where that came from. And I was told, you can learn to be tolerant and helpful and that kind of thing, but you're probably not going to fix everybody. And you probably got to stop trying to do that. That was a great relief to me. Because I was kind of freed of my own bondage of thinking that I was, the savior of this particular meeting. I think a lot of people fall into that. But I know I can't be helpful to everybody as far as like taking them through the steps. Some people just aren't going to do that. But I can be kind and I can be tolerant to everyone. That's a promise. That's something, because that isn't my nature. My nature is to get in your face and tell you how you've made me uncomfortable and how you offended me and all that. But God has done something in me today where I handle that a lot better today when people are weird. Except for the person that doesn't get my pizza order correct. Then I get a little intolerant. So what about you guys? What's your experience been as far as God helping you to take a kind view and a tolerant view towards everyone?
I think that this is a good place to verify what Marv was talking about. Not to verify it. I'm using the wrong words here. For me to do this, to actually do this, be kind and tolerant towards people, I had to grow there. I had to learn that I wasn't going to be able to do that with all people. You see, that there would be times when I would react, and I had to. It was a process for me to get into this. But remember what we're doing here. We're doing a 4-step. We're lining it up, and what the book is showing us, just for what we do when we look at it, what it's talking about, is it's a new way of looking at things. We look at these people. We didn't like their symptoms and the way they disturbed us. You can see that because you have it on paper, and they're kind of like describing this out in this prayer. So we ask God right away. It's teaching us to use God. We even need God in the steps. Mm-hmm. See, so we start to look at these people and we turn it over. And maybe when we turn it over and we see that we brought a lot of selfish, dishonest, and fearful things to the relationship, and this person was sick too, disturbed, and we've seen that, then we can start to show them the grace that God is showing us by giving us the ability to take a kinder and tolerant view towards them, to approach them and talk to them on a different level. You see what I mean?
Right.
Than we ever have been able to, because we're angry at them and we don't know how to communicate, because the anger is the driving force. The fear is the driving force. You see what I mean? Mm-hmm. That's inside of us. We're doing these things, but we're being driven by the anger and the fear.
Right.
You see what I mean? The difference between driving, it's the old cattle thing,
Yeah.
You're being driven by a bunch of cowboys. Their hats got fear and resentment and jealousy and
Marv.
and the cow thinks he's going on his own. He's being hurt, you see. So anyway, those things are pushing us. You see what I'm saying, though, don't you? And so right away we're using these things and their promises. If you do them, if you did this and you found that God was giving you a different temperament, then you would see the worth.
Right.
You see what I mean? He'd become precious over a period of time, because without him, you'd revert back to what? Same old you.
Same old person. Yeah.
Same old you.
Yeah.
Who we are.
And may I just say, if you're doing it today, it's not old behavior, right?
Yeah. Yeah. What's our excuse for our behavior today if we're not drinking?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, you know how we are. You hear that, don't you? Oh, you know how we are. That's just how we are. And I'm like, just quit it.
Mm-hmm. But I wanted to sit around and tell everybody about this prayer instead of applying it in my life and using it.
Yeah. And sometimes I think we think we're applying it if we're just sharing it with somebody.
Yeah. Ain't that something?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I've done it. No, you've talked about it.
I think sometimes we're applying it when we just keep our mouth shut.
Yeah. Isn't that the truth?
For me, anyway, that's... I've thought for a long time, and Bruce touched on it, that once we've done the third step and being really serious about it, it came upon me down the road that, hey, you know what? God extended this grace to you. Your responsibility is to extend that to others. And one of the ways I do that, especially with, I should say, one of the ways I try to do that, especially with those up close and personal, is not to open my mouth. Because sometimes it's fearful what can come out of my mouth. And to me, being kindly and tolerant means not putting that kind of stuff on other people. And that's a beginning point for me.
That's an age-old adage, right? If you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all.
Especially in meetings where, you can't help it. You're sitting in a meeting, let's say there's 25 people in there. Okay, somewhere along the line, in an hour and a half, somebody is going to do something, say something. At least it happens to me, where I start to get upset. And every single time I have to say, look, you don't really know what's going on. All you're seeing is what you're seeing. Give them the benefit of the doubt. Keep your mouth shut. And if you can, have the opportunity, say hi to them before you leave the meeting. It's as simple as that for me. And that's a big deal because I used to be pretty abrasive. So,
you see, but he's saying something that's absolutely right. If Marv knows his temperament and he knows that his words are going to hurt somebody, learn to keep your mouth shut and listen, and then say something kind to him as you're, leaving the meeting or when you can.
Right.
You see, I mean, what's wrong with that?
Yeah.
You see? And Marv knows him, and now there's other people that have a gift where they can say something. See, and that's what's really nice about these steps. It's your inventory. It's not the other guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay? But when you hear somebody describe it, you think that there's a 9,364 methods, and there's not.
Yeah.
So Marv knows that if he's going to do these things and be that kind of a man, that he needs God's help.
Amen. Amen. Well, number 3 here, this is on page 68. It says, just to the extent that we do what we think He, meaning God, would have us, and humbly rely on Him, and here's the promise, does He enable us to match calamity with serenity? What's that mean to you guys? Matching calamity with serenity. How does that work?
Yeah, when I'm all tied up in a knot and full of fear and things going on around me and I don't know how to handle them, that's calamity to me. Mm-hmm. And he matches that with serenity in the midst of that, even sometimes today. And I know I've stepped right out there with this one is, I can have serenity in the midst of the storm.
Yeah.
I know there's a God, and I know He's well at work in the human heart. and that's some form of serenity if you can gather those thoughts in the midst of calamity.
Marv,
Yes.
do you experience peace and serenity in the midst of the storm?
At times. Not all the time.
All the time, right?
Bruce mentioned the word temperament a little bit ago. And I was telling him yesterday, we were talking, and I'm reading this book on temperaments, 4 different temperaments. Well, the author, Tim LaHaye is the author, and he starts out going through each temperament and tells all the good attributes about them. And then he goes into the bad attributes about them. Well, one of my bad attributes, which the big book and 12 steps and everything else talk about, is the kind of temperament that I have. I'm self-centered. And I'm very sensitive. So sometimes I do not feel like God is giving me that serenity.
Mm-hmm.
So my battle is to exchange feelings for faith.
Uh-huh.
And that is a battle for me.
Yeah.
And I suspect for the human race as a whole. Some people are maybe a little farther ahead than I am, but that's still a battle. And that's why right here it says we start to straighten out mentally.
Yeah.
Well, I'm still starting, I guess. But yeah, there have been times when the world's coming down around my shoulders, and I know the presence of God. I hesitate to say I feel the presence of God, but I know that I know that I know. And then other times it's really a battle. It's a struggle.
Sometimes we want God to save us the way we want God to save us.
Exactly.
See, here he is that God came for a very specific reason, and we want him to do it our way.
It's interesting because we were talking about this the other day, several of us, about the word Hosanna means save us now. It was a cry of the Jewish people back during this is the week. This is Easter week. The other day was Palm Sunday. Was Jesus' triumphant entrance into Jerusalem, and here were all these people screaming, "Save us now! Save us now! Save us now!" What they were crying out was, "We want you to save us the way we want you to save us." They were looking for a military overthrow of Rome. We want you to save us now. We think of it as this beautiful, they're waving palms, save us now. But they were demanding, and that's why the very same people crucified him, because they were making a demand and he didn't meet it, because he didn't come the way they wanted him to come.
You don't think they weren't jubilant people?
Oh, I think they were.
Mm-hmm.
I think they were very jubilant. And I think particularly the children were. Yeah. But they were still making a demand, save us now, right now. And I think we gained a big discussion about this at some point, but it's interesting that if God were to save us the way we demand it, what kind of change would that have caused throughout humanity today? If he were to come and overthrown Rome and the whole 9 yards that day and come off the cross like he could have.
All of Christianity would fall on its face without the cross. I mean,
But boy, they wanted that. They wanted him to do it right now.
See, he came for...
And really, I think in the beginning of this, number 3, I think the secret is right there, because it says, just to the extent that we do what we think he would have of us. Right there is the problem. It's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, you bet. You bet. And
And that's where I get into trouble.
And then
As I'm doing what I think he would, the way he wants me to think or
right.
action or whatever. In reality, it may not be at all what.
And that's why it says, and humbly rely on him.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if we take that piece out, then we're just left with our own thinking again.
See, that's the learning to humble ourselves. I actually thought for a while, because this humility was so elusive for me, I thought that was a product of God himself. I thought God had to do that. And then I finally found out where in Peter where it talks about humble yourself under the mighty hand of God, that we could do that. You know what I mean? There's a process by which we can do that. And I don't think it's adding to grace. And so I that was just huge for me because our pride's so big and I've relied upon myself for so long that it was hard to humble myself where he could work in and through me. You know, I think it was all him, but I think to reach that place, I couldn't even do that. You know what I mean? I like the part in the book that just after that, what they talk about, and it's the next paragraph in the book, and I'm not going to read the whole paragraph, but it says, we never apologize for God. Instead, we let him demonstrate through us what he can do. We ask him to remove our fear and direct our attention to what he would have us be. At once, we commence to outgrow fear. Saying, I think that is something we learn to practice. This is right in the middle of the step. It's giving us instructions on what to do.
Yeah.
And that's something you have to practice. I still have fear. I still have calamity. But it's learning to trust him in all situations, you know. And so if I don't do that, and I'm not trusting him, the question, and I've talked with Marv about this, him and me went around this quite a few times. If we're not trusting God, who are we trusting?
Sure.
And I'll tell you.
It always comes back to self-reliance.
It's me.
Yeah.
And isn't that what got me in so much trouble?
And I love this too because it goes back to what Marv was saying with the word start. It says that once we commence to outgrow, and that is conditional on asking him to remove our fear. When we ask him to remove our fear, then we begin to outgrow fear. But outgrow suggests to me that it's a process. We're outgrowing it.
Yes.
Yeah, we just don't fit into what we're supposed to fit into right away.
You bet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what a promise. At once we commence to outgrow this thing. Mm-hmm. That's a great comfort to me.
Here's a question. How are you going to know that if you don't do it?
Yeah. Yeah. Because there's people listening to this show right now. They're going to walk away from this broadcast going, you know, that was really good. That sounded really good. And they'll never go back and do this 4-step. They'll never actually do it. They'll never actually sit down.
That's a shame because
it is a shame.
I was riddled with fear. I mean, really riddled with it. And even in the penitentiary, and some horrible things happened because of my fear and the driving force of it to do something, you know. So, and today to have that diminished, to have that settled down, to not to worry about those things, to have an argument with somebody and to be able to go rest and not have that consume me and be afraid that there's going to be retaliation. You know, I'm not saying that still doesn't happen.
Right.
What I'm saying is that's been diminished and it's no longer the driving force because I've learned to put myself in his hands in those situations. But it seems that that's the kind of thing that has to happen to me before I'll go to him. Why can't I do that all the time? In the good times, in the bad times, see?
Yeah.
Monty, what's caught my attention, and I know I'm kind of skipping here.
No, that's okay.
on number 10.
Oh, that's good because that's where we were going to go to because we're running out of time, but we were going to go to number 10.
Yeah. It really struck me just now reading this. It really gets confusing in a, I'm just going to quote unquote, religious matters versus spiritual. Mm-hmm. I read a lot, and I know you two do too. And it's confusing to me because I know that part of what's going on with me has to do with my self-will. Okay? Here it's saying something that I guess I didn't realize. It says that God can remove whatever self-will has blocked you off from Him. And that, pardon me, but that excites me because that is something that I'm fighting to do myself. And I can't do it.
Right. It's like
I can't do it. And maybe it's okay to relax in this thing.
It is,
and
Marv. We got to stop trying to remove our own character defects.
Exactly. That's what that's saying.
I love it when somebody says, well, I've been working on my character defect of. And I'm like, wait a minute. We ask God to remove our character defects. I can't do that because my nature is to hold on to each and every one of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Boy, to me, that's powerful. And
it is
hopefully
powerful.
For a lot of people, that by itself should slap them upside the head and say,
Well, it's interesting because
it's kind of like Noah built an ark.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
People, I will remove your self-will.
There's a place in the book, Mark, where it actually talks about selfish, self-centered is the root of the problem, and there's no way of entirely getting rid of that without his aid. And what I found out about myself and what I was willing to accept, God, I'm so excited to hear him say that.
Yeah.
Because we do. Me, you
betcha.
Marv, every one of us struggle with the fact that we say we're powerless, but then we say we got to go out and change things.
Yeah.
Or we figure we've got to change them. And the thing is we have to build a relationship with him and trust him. And then he'll help us to do that, or he'll do it. There's times when I think he gives us the strength and the ability to do these things that we have to do. But sometimes we just don't know how. We just don't know how not to rest.
Isn't it interesting that
To rest, I mean.
the beginning of the sentence says, we hope you are convinced now that God can remove whatever self-will has blocked you off from him. He uses that word convinced again. He's trying to get us to understand we have to be convinced. I mean, back at step 2 in the ABCs, being convinced, we were at step 3. We read over that, really quickly in the readings, in the rooms. Being convinced. Now, you can't be at step 3 until you've been convinced of 1 and 2. Being convinced. And so here he says again, we hope you are convinced now, once again, and I have to be convinced regularly. I don't know about you guys, because I'm always thinking that I can fix this thing. I wake up thinking that. And I have to be convinced on a daily basis that I can't.
I can usually knock off some of my self-centeredness and be of help to people.
Yeah.
But I can't do these things on a regular basis without living out of this spiritual life. See, I can't live out of the self-centered life and accomplish these things. I have to try to learn to live out of this spiritual. And even in my spiritual life, that's just, what's the word I want to use? I want to say impregnated. But there's so much self-centeredness in it.
Yeah.
Part of the thing, I don't know if I should call it a problem or not, but so many books written by spiritual and education wise people.
Mm-hmm.
They say something like, and I'm just going to, so if you're having a problem with blah, 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 whatever it may be, then you need to do blah, blah, blah. And like I said, and I think you guys are the same way. I spent a lot of time studying,
Right.
researching, and, well, I get really confused because here's this revelation to me, once again, that God will handle my self-will, okay? But then on the other hand, you've got all this other literature, tons of literature, saying, well, this will happen, but you have to do this, 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 or this.
Sure.
And to a newcomer in AA or somebody trying to walk in a spiritual walk, am I wrong? Wouldn't that just be really hard and confusing? And you're scratching your head saying, okay, you want me to depend on this God, but these guys are saying this, this, and this, and I got all these character defects, and you know what I mean? Ad infinitum.
Yeah, we've got programs and DVDs, and I'm going to get myself into trouble here, but I'm going to say it anyway. This is one of the issues I have with the largest self-help publication industry in the world, Hazelden. Hazelden is the largest publication of self-help books in the world for people whose problem was self-help. They write tons of these self-help books, and that's our problem, is we're trying to help ourselves.
Gotcha. Yeah.
It's crazy. It's insanity. And I'm like, what? And I'm not saying that they don't publicize some very good stuff. They do.
Well, part of the problem with what you're saying and is people, at least I can't just let down and relax and say, oh, thank you, Lord. Right. You're going to take care of it, because you got all this other stuff coming at you.
Yeah, you're being inundated with it all, and you're even being inundated with it in the rooms. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so, what do we do? Because you got all this stuff, and it says you're supposed to do those. You do those things.
Yeah.
So, I think that he's got a very valid point. We could do another show on that, and we've done 6 of them already.
Yeah.
But I think that's a very valid point, and I think it needs to be brought up. We get these things. I'll give you one of the things I do, because so many people walk away from us, like we were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
This is my foundation.
He's holding the big book.
The big book. When I'm teaching the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous,
mm-hmm.
when I'm doing spiritual things, such as growing in my spiritual knowledge and understanding of who my Creator is, well, then I use the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
See, and that's my foundation,
mm-hmm.
and that's where I go to.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And then there's all these other books that are written about it, and I feel that I have to be grounded in the Bible before I can read all these books, because they have such a huge influence on me. And to say they don't, I have some children that are of a different faith than me, mm-hmm. and I want to read about their faith, for I can talk to them about it, for I can have some conversations with them. And I wasn't able to do that until I got grounded in my own faith.
It's interesting you say that, because even with like the big book, and this is why I think it's important for people in the whatever 12-step fellowship that they're in, that they be grounded in their basic text, because there's all sorts of other literature out there that sounds real good, and looks like it matches up with their basic text, but if you know the basic text really well, you can see where it does and where it doesn't. Case in point, the book Living Sober. This is a book that is AA conference approved literature that slid under the table really quick. It wasn't even supposed to be approved. If you read Living Sober, it's the yellow pamphlet kind of thin book, and you read the big book and you really compare them, you would swear it's two different programs. Because one is really man-centered and it's got good stuff in it, but it's not the real solution. But you would swear it was two different things. So I have to be grounded in that. And like you were saying, Bruce, like in our faith, it is important for me to be grounded in the Word of God, because there's other things that'll come along. You go to a Bible bookstore, there's lots of books in there that are anything but biblically correct. And I could read those and go, oh, that's good. That sounds good. But if I'm not founded in the Word of God, then I'm going to believe all sorts of garbage. And I think it's the same thing when it comes to if you're in Narcotics Anonymous, you need to know the basic text of NA. If you're in Alcoholics Anonymous, you need to know the basic text of Alcoholics Anonymous. Otherwise, you're going to be doing all sorts of weird stuff.
Yeah, well, I can just be influenced because I hear things and they sound good to me, and I'd really like them to be that way.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
Sometimes this path that we've picked, this spiritual path, it's pretty hard. You know what I mean? Because people don't want to hear it from us. You know what I mean?
They don't.
We have to let the tenacity, learn to be, to march forward. Because because of our faith, we get arrows shot at us.
Sure.
And society's doing one thing and we're trying to do another. You know what I mean? And it's just, they're living and doing what they want. You see what I mean? We have our own flesh and our own problems. We have all this pornography and everything else. And we have to stay away from that and not get involved. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And yet we're the capsule of the world for that here in the United States.
Oh, you bet.
So, I mean, if you think that it's not a life of denial, then you're wrong.
Yes, indeedy. Well, listen, guys, we're out of time. Next week, the promises associated with Step 5. Yip, zippity doo-dah. So we're coming around. We're coming to the mountaintop on this. We're almost halfway through. This has been really good. I learn something every time we meet together to do this show. I appreciate both of you guys so much. Thank you. Thank you, Marv.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Bruce.
Thank you.
Yeah, good stuff. And thank you, Cecil, wherever you are. Cecil will be back in full form next week. You never know what Cecil's got cooking up. You just never know.
I love Cecil.
I love you too.
I think you guys are nuts.
All right. And on that note,
4 down. Nuts.
That's right. We are wishing God's perfect serenity for you.
This has been a broadcast of Take 12 Recovery Radio and KHLT Recovery Broadcasting.